devotion, deprivation. Integration. Let's see what happens in a friendly way. Just sending the knees forwards and away. So devotion and also exercise of the vestibular system is there in a deep bow, and deprivation is depriving oneself of oxygen for one breath. It's a kind of way of going deep at the start of practice, so it's like a reminder that we're working at a deep level, deep devotion, deep bow, and deep deprivation by starving ourselves of oxygen for one breath. It kind of brings us into the like the well springs of our happening as a person. And then this is left-right integration, to do with, again, vestibular system, but also integration of left and right, the two sides, and then knees forwards and away, which is more of an internal movement, a release of the legs and the body away from each other. Not a movement so much as a release, a direction of release, knees forwards and away. That is like prevents discomnoceration of the back. Knees forwards and away. I cannot emphasise enough how important that direction has been for me. Learnt from Alexander work, but applied to sitting in full lotus. That's the starting point of my practice as every morning. Devotion, deprivation, integration side to side, knees forwards and away. Let's see what happens in a friendly way. Sending the knees forwards and away. And I learnt from the Alexander work the importance of directing in a friendly way, not in an aggressive doing way. Then I came reciting again on a verse at the end of MMK chapter 23. In Sanskrit it is Evam Nirudyate Vidya Viparyaya Nirodhanat Avidyayam Nirudayam Samskaradyam Nirudyate, and made into a kind of English poem. Thus is denial caused to cease by seeing off going wrong. Where denial's been caused to cease, seeds of suffering won't last long. And that is Nagarjuna's expression of Alexander's principle, that there's no such thing as being right. Equally, there is no such thing as going wrong. So seeing off going wrong doesn't mean you stop like bad behaviour. It means you give up the idea of right and wrong. And that's liberating. It's liberating from that sort of tightness of aggressively trying to be right. So being wrong is the best friend you've got in this work, Madhuri Bala used to say. So it's the same principle. Being wrong is the best friend you've got, is a kind of friendly attitude to practice, which is the antidote to trying to be right. Now, Alexander understood that in light of emptiness, which he understood intuitively. In Nagarjuna's verses in MMK, the principle could not be more explicit. It's said in the Agama Sutras, very old Pali Sutras, also Sanskrit Agama Sutras, that all the Buddha's teachings are Shunyata Samyukta. And in the Heart Sutra, it says that in the Heart Sutra in Chinese in such a way that people don't understand it. Connected with emptiness. All the Buddha's teachings are connected with emptiness. So if we don't understand emptiness, whether it's intuitive or preferably explicitly, we're not going to have clarity about the Buddha's teachings. And unfortunately, the reason that my teacher Gudo Nishijima and I couldn't see eye to eye in the end is because we weren't clear about emptiness. When I came across the Alexander work, I knew there was something in there that I needed to get to the bottom of. And so that in itself caused a rift. Because Nishijima Roshi was sort of in denial about it. For him, his understanding was already rather perfect. So this was a kind of a challenge to the truth of his teaching. So we fell out, as is sort of well known, but people don't actually really know the situation between me and Gudo Nishijima Roshi. I was talking to Mike Latchford on a video call a few days ago, and even Mike, as we were talking about it, was sort of saying he didn't realise a lot of things I was telling him. So now I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what Jean-Marc Bazzi and Jundo Cohen are doing. I've been more focused. The reason I haven't done a video in the last few weeks is I've been focusing on translation work, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I've noticed in passing that this kind of those two in particular, Jean-Marc Bazzi, Jundo Cohen, kind of in their pursuit of fame and profit, are kind of trying to derive legitimacy from their intimate association with Nishijima Roshi. And of course, from where I sit, this is totally absurd, and it would be hilarious if it wasn't quite serious as well. So I think the time might have come to pull rank on those guys. And so one means of doing that is I've got Nishijima Roshi at the end of it, towards the end of his life, sent me this kind of golden booklet, one of those expanding Japanese kind of documents, folded up. Obviously important because it was gold, had a golden cover, and I think it was something like a Dogen Sangha lineage or something. But he told me that he had two made, and he was sending me one, and he was sending one to somebody else. I don't know who that someone else was. It was all in Japanese, so it may well have been Taijun, I guess, who he proposed to make his successor, and nobody would have objected to Taijun being his successor, because she served him very, very intimately over the years. But I don't know who the other. But he didn't tell me who the other person he was sending one to. But the point is, he sent one to me. Now, as I was telling Michael, when he set up the Zazen Dojo in Motoyawata in 1987 to 88, basically I was installed there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I was kind of keep holding the fort, and he used to come 2 or 3 days a week, 2 or 3 nights a week to sleep there. So at that time, I was really serving him. I did that for a few months in a way that Taijun ended up doing on a more permanent basis. But that's a kind of a real intimate association when you're doing the master's washing and so on. Now at that time he offered to transmit the Dharma to me. I was the first person that he offered to transmit it to. But I declined because I knew I hadn't got to the bottom of what I needed to get to the bottom of. I didn't have the confidence to accept. I wasn't celibate, so I thought, I can't manifest myself as a proper monk, and I didn't understand the teaching. So that was 1987, 88. But I was the first person he offered to transmit the Dharma to. I'm saying this so people understand I had a very intimate connection with Nishijima Roshi. And the criteria was I wanted to know that I understood what I needed to understand. And now I do from studying Nagarjuna. But I didn't then. And also I sort of knew that Nishijima Roshi himself, his confidence of understanding everything was somewhat false. I couldn't really have confidence in him as well. So that was the real situation between us. And I ended up having to leave the dojo because I fell out with people. And after that, I threw myself, as I tend to do, into what I know I can be useful with, which is translation work. So from 1988, I really devoted myself. So if between 1986 and 1988, I had a standard. I practiced Zazen 5 hours every day, a minimum, sometimes 7 or 8. But I had it in mind that I didn't want to be just a dilettante sort of dabbler type translator. I wanted to be grounded in real practice of Zazen. So for those 2 years, 86 to 88, including while I was at the Zazen Dojo, I practiced Zazen kind of exclusively. That's kind of why I fell out with people, really. My energy was too kind of it wasn't conducive to getting along with people, unless they were practicing Zazen wholeheartedly as I was. That's what I thought was necessary. Anyway, from 88 onwards, I gave up the standard of 5 hours a day in order to focus more on the Shobogenzo translation. But so after a couple of years of that, I became somewhat depressed. I was sort of like too focused, and was getting very unhappy. And one morning, I decided, look, cause and effect has kind of got me into this gloomy, dismal situation. And cause and effect, my own action can get me out of it. So that morning, I decided to do 2 things for myself, which was join a sports club down the road, to do weight training, which I used to enjoy when I was at school. So I was going to join a gym and learn to ride a motorbike. So I joined the gym and signed up for motorbike lessons. And then at the gym, I met my wife, and before too long, she was pregnant with our first son, and so we were an item. Got married and so on, and so that took care of the struggle with celibacy and being depressed and so on. But I became extremely busy because the Shobogenzo translation had progressed to the point where publication deadlines were looming. This was early 1990s, and I was concentrated then on making money as a professional translator, mainly, and also working for an economist in Tokyo that I had a long association with. So I was too busy. I was under stress because too much intellectual work going on. And at that time, maybe it was 91 or 2, Nishijima Roshi sent me this book, translation of Mula Madhyamaka Karika by Kenneth Inada, Nagarjuna, a translation of his Mula Madhyamaka Karika with an introductory essay. So here's you can read that. With the compliments of Gudo Wafu Nishijima. It says, the comments and translations are unreliable, and so please use as original texts. Now, Sensei's idea at that time was that he would find confirmation of the 4 philosophies or the 3 philosophies and 1 reality. He would find confirmation of his understanding of Master Dogen's teaching in Nagarjuna. So on that basis, for me, at the time, up to my eyeballs in the Shobogenzo translation per se, I thought, what the hell is he sending me this for now? You know, I've already got far too much on my plate. The truth was, as it turned out, that MMK, the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, did not confirm the Buddha's teaching as Nishijima Sensei understood it. It actually clarified that the 2 views in Shobogenzo are called Joken Gedo and Danken Gedo, which Nishijima Sensei translates the non-Buddhist eternity view and the non-Buddhist nihilist view. He translated Gedo as non-Buddhist, which I prefer to understand non-Buddhist as being more of an ironic term. Someone who's a non-Buddha. It means a Buddha, but not as people understand Buddha. So Gedo means off the way. So Joken Gedo means eternity view, off the way, and Danken Gedo means cut view, off the way. And they represent the Sanskrit Shashvata Drishti and Ucheda Drishti. And MMK is basically all about clarifying those 2 views, the 2 extremes. And by the middle, Madhyena, by the middle, the Buddha taught dependent arising. What happens emptily happens by dependent arising. What happens causally grounded in everything else that's happening. That teaching is super clear in MMK. But it's not so clear in Shobogenzo. It's not so clear in the Lotus Sutra. It's not so clear anywhere in Chinese. It's not so clear from the Heart Sutra. It's super clear in Nagarjuna's writings. So when we understand so for Nishijima Sensei, eternalism is idealism, and nihilism is materialism. But that isn't idealism and materialism are not understood in light of emptiness. The two views, Ucheda Drishti and Shashvata Drishti, are connected with emptiness. All the Buddha's teachings are connected with emptiness, especially those two views. So now, having been studying MMK now on and off, kind of not too intensively, but more, you know, I've been devoted for the last 8 years really to keeping this field productive of veg and fruits and so on, and I've been what I actually, for my own happiness, what I enjoy doing more than studying MMK is reciting Asvaghosa's verse in Sanskrit, especially in connection with the 8 thoughts of a great person, which aren't actually covered in MMK. That's what I like to do for my own practice, sending my knees forwards and away, and I relate each of the 8 thoughts. I relate with the direction to send the knees forwards and away while sitting in lotus, and also relate it with Asvaghosa's verse. That's just what makes me happy. But so the MMK translation is not something I focused on every day religiously like I did the Shobogenzo translation. There have been kind of fallow periods, like in growing veg or growing strawberries, whatever, to be honest. And I hope it's been like the old thing that they say in the Scandinavian countries: you learn to ski in summer and learn to swim in winter. But it got to the point a few weeks ago where I said to Mike Latchford, I suggested to Mike Latchford, there are 3 chapters at the end of MMK, which is exploring the 4 Noble Truths, exploring Nirvana, and exploring the 12-fold dependent arising of suffering. Those 3 chapters I know off by heart. I knew them off by heart in Sanskrit, and over the last few weeks I know my English translation of them off by heart as well. So the time has come where those are in the can now. I passed them over to Mike Latchford, and the final chapter, chapter 27, I didn't have quite so much confidence in having got that one off. I hadn't memorised it in Sanskrit, and but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, that has also come to the point now where I think I've understood that well enough that I want to go ahead and publish that as well. So just as it happens, I thought we should include the 2 dedicatory verses, and then with a bit of auspicious arithmetic, the 2 dedicatory verses plus the 40 verses on the 4 Noble Truths is 42, plus the 24 on Nirvana makes 66, and then 12 on the 12-fold dependent arising of suffering makes 78, and then 30 verses in the last chapter on views brings it up to 108, which is a very auspicious number. So I thought, what a nice subtitle. The title I decided a few weeks ago will be just using elements that are from inside those verses, which is cultivating bhavana, margasya, of the path. So margasya bhavana, cultivating of the path, is from chapter 24 verse 24, and then bhavanat, through a letting happen, is key word in chapter 26, through a letting happen. So bhavana Margasya, Margasya Bhavana, Bhavanat will be cultivating of a path through a letting happen. So that will be the title of this compendium of those last 4 chapters, and then a subtitle, which I don't think is too hubristic, because he's not expressing. All it's expressing is confidence in what Nagarjuna taught, the power of what Nagarjuna clarified. So subtitle, the practical gist of Nagarjuna's magnum opus. 108 verses to save the world. Now, in the back of my mind, as it's become clear over the last 4 years that we're up against evil, to put it in a word, we're up against evil. I've had it in the back of my mind that the promoters of the evil agenda, it would be logical for them to bump me off, because Nagarjuna's teaching of emptiness is absolutely opposed to, and is the antidote to, their realism. If you want to understand their philosophy, George Soros is the poster boy for it, and his philosophy is kind of belief in hard-nosed reality. So it's like extreme Shashvata Drishti, the eternity view, because he's saying reality exists. And so this is one of the views that Nagarjuna takes pains, well, it's the main view that Nagarjuna takes pains to falsify in MMK. But as he often says in many verses, if A is established, then the negation of A is also readily established. So the eternity view and nihilism are 2 bedfellows. So you only need to look at what's happening in the world, with a woke nonsense. So if you look at what Soros supports, it's all kind of nihilistic nonsense. You can so you've got, on one hand, cold, hard, objective reality, but people are free to identify as any old LGBTQ plus, or as a furry, or all that nonsense. That's nihilism, not grounded in any kind of reality. So anyway, the point is that those 108 verses, if I've done my job properly, they'll change the world by themselves. I've done my bit already. So if they bump me off, all being well, it'll be too late. The cat will be out of the bag. So yeah, watch this space. The plan is to have a nice little hardback book that'll do justice to how extremely practically useful Nagarjuna's teaching is, and how effective it will be in helping the good triumph over the evil. Yeah, so to finish off, I wanted to come back to, recently I did a search, on Jundo Cohen. So that you got the artificial intelligence gives you the overview of what he's up to, and I think part of the reason Gudo Nishijima Sensei and I fell out in the end, the fundamental reason neither of us was clear about the teaching of emptiness. We each saw enough of it to see a fault in the other, because I didn't understand it clearly, and neither did he. So that was the fundamental thing. It was our own lack, our own slowness on the uptake. If I'd have been able to live as a celibate monk, like I'm doing now, when I was in my 20s, I would have got where I am now all the quicker, but I couldn't. I got married, was under stress trying to earn money and so on, and so there was all that. That was part of it on my side. And on Nishijima Sensei's side, he was doing his best, but Nagarjuna's teaching was not available to him. It's available to me because 20 years ago I started learning Sanskrit. After he made Brad Warner his successor and not me, I had a couple of years, again a kind of a dark period, that I came out of. I realised I need to go back closer to the source and study Sanskrit. But Jundo Koin, I think the powers that be sounds incredibly conspiratorial till you start looking into things like 9/11 and start to become aware of what's really been going on. I think James Cohen was an agent provocateur. There's a very good book by Richard Poe called How the British Invented Communism and Blamed it on the Jews. And when he says the British, he doesn't mean us British as a people. It means the vestiges of the British Empire, or the occult banking syndicate, the military occult banking syndicate behind the British Empire. The people who are responsible for bringing down the 9/11 Twin Towers as a pretext for increasing their hold on power. When you understand their agenda, then it doesn't seem too much of a stretch that they would send Cohen in, because they often use Jews as a pretext. The British have long done that, right back to the Balfour Declaration and the connection with the Rothschilds, and nowadays putting the blame for everything on Zionism. This is usual, the old imperial modus operandi. Use the Jews. So I think Jundo Kohen fits very much into that profile. What I'm saying is not anti-Semitic. What I'm saying is more anti-British and also anti-Jundo Kohen. Because when you look at his, if you trust the artificial intelligence to tell you what he's up to, it's all transhumanism. So again, if you relate it to the eternalism, is man wants to be eternal. Man, like the Tower of Babel builders, they make themselves into gods. And Nishijima Roshi himself had that tendency. When he came and intervened to make people's posture better, he thought he was playing God. See, this is what I understood from the Alexander work. Alexander teaching is very indirect. As an Alexander teacher, it is not your job to intervene directly, as if you know how the mechanism works and try and fix it. The method is more indirect and preventative. If you stop doing the wrong thing, the right thing will do itself, was Alexander's principle. So it's very humble. Marjorie Barlow used to tell me, Humility has to be our middle name. So if you really want to go up, send your knees forwards and away. That's the indirect method. Really focus on that, getting the hips and the legs directed right, and then going up will tend to do itself. It's not, rather than sort of trying to have a good posture by arranging things from on a top-down basis. So when you look at Cohen, it's the exact opposite. It's transhumanism, it's making himself God. It's all about radical equanimity, seeing, accepting everything as it is. So what the Buddha taught was yata bhuta, which is often translated as it is. But bhuta means being, it also means happening. So what Nagarjuna clarifies, again, exceptionally clearly, is what's real is what's happening. Not what is, what's happening. So to be or not to be is basically a British psyop going back to Hamlet. And Cohen fits right into that. So that's how the evil agenda would have us believing it's all about identifying as what we are, to be or not to be. While they get on with their own operations, which they call LIHOP, let it happen on purpose. Or MIHOP, make it happen on purpose. So bringing down the Twin Towers was MIHOP, they made it happen on purpose. But then the sort of culture wars, they're using LIHOP a lot. They set up some stupid thesis and then controlled opposition of the antithesis, and set up these one against the other on Twitter, and then we're supposed to take sides with one or the other. So that's why I really believe those 108 verses, 2 dedicatory verses, chapters 24, 25, 26, 27 of MMK, they really are 108 verses to save the world. If you understand those verses, you'll understand exactly why Cohen is a fraud, and I hope you'll understand from what I've just said that Jean-Marc Bazzi's claims to have a group of intimate successors of Nishijima Roshi are laughable. Laughable. He didn't know Nishijima Roshi at all. People who knew him is Taijun and me, who I was 22. I was 20. It was the summer of 1982 when I met Nishijima Roshi, after I'd been in Japan for 6 months. I'm the one who's had the intimate connection with him, and I say, Jean-Marc Bazzi, you are a seeker of fame and profit, and you're a liar. Same thing with James Cohen. They're not devoted to the truth, they're devoted to the opposite of the truth. Have I said everything I want to say? Devotion. Deprivation. integration. Side to side. Top to bottom. Let's see what happens in a friendly way. Sending the knees forwards and away. Let happen, Rahula, the friendliness of letting happen. Let happen, Rahula, the kindness of letting happen. Let happen, Rahula, the joy of letting happen. Let happen, Rahula, the transcendent forgiveness of letting happen. See, Nishijima Roshi's great thing was reality. Reality. Reality is the truth. In reality like that is reality is too easily misconstrued as existing out there. So in one of the verses on Nirvana, Nagarjuna says, Aprahinam asampraptam anuchinam ashashvatam anirudam anutpanam etad nirvanam uchyate. Not dropped off, not achieved. See, Zazen is a dropping off of body and mind. But Nirvana, it's not that we drop off body and mind and realise the state of Nirvana. That's how it's usually understood. No. Look, Nirvana is the not dropped off. When we drop off body and mind, something is happening which is not dropped off, which is everything that's happening. Not existing out there, everything that's happening. It's actually so bloody simple. But as Mike Latchford rightly says, translating bhavana as happening changes everything. When you understand that it's about letting happen, you see, the bastards know it's about letting happen. That's why they say, LIHOP, let it happen on purpose. They're way ahead of us. They've got us believing in to be or not to be, and they're merrily getting on with LIHOP operations. So we counter that by our own kind of LIHOP operations. But LIHOP for the good, not for the bad. So then, anuchinam shashvatam. Anuchinam means not being cut. So what's happening is not cut. It's a continuity. Ashashvatam. It's a continuity, but it's not eternal. It's not eternal. It's neither ending nor endless. What's happening is neither ending or endless. What's ending is nihilism, and what's never ending is eternalism. But what's happening is in the middle of those two. It's in the middle, and it's the total rejection of those two views, the abandoning of those two views. Aprahinam asampraptam anuchinam ashashvatam anirudam anutpanam. It's not inhibited and it's not instigated because it's happening. You can't. So the Alexander work is all about inhibition. But it's like dropping off. Zazen is all about dropping off. But what's important is not what's dropped off or what's inhibited. What's important is what's not inhibited. What's happening is not inhibited. And then, by the same token, it's not instigated. So there's a humility there, isn't there? It's not anything we can do anything about. We can't. It's not up to us to inhibit it or to instigate it. What's happening trumps everything. This etad, this happening here, what etad means. What he's talking about is everything happening. Nirvanam uchyate is called nirvana. That chapter on nirvana is a cracker. It will change everything. It will change everything when people are able to study it.